well known for her long-standing association with Femina magazine. As an editor for 12 years, she's written a lot of biographies, including on Hari Prasad Chaurasia, Jagjit Singh, Guru Dutt. Please welcome on stage. Arunaraje Patil is a critically acclaimed award-winning filmmaker, writer, editor, director, and producer, a gold medalist from the Film Institute of India. She is the first trained female technician in the Indian film industry. Arunaraje has landed her expertise in every entertainment medium, in ad films, documentaries, TV series. As a film professional, she strives for gender equality, which is visible in her movies with strong female characters. Kanchan Marathe is a media professional with 18 years of experience in the Indian film industry. She has remained creatively involved in distinguished projects across TV, film, OTT platforms. She has been associated with films like Drishyam, Andhadhun, and many other feature films through her role as creative director. She's also co-founded a production house named Little Mad Pictures last year. Please welcome on stage. And finally, we have Prakash Magdum. He's a 1999 batch IIS officer, designated currently as the Additional Director General of the Press Information Bureau in Gujarat. He has previously served at the National Film Archive of India head. Besides being a dedicated civil servant, he's a movie buff who enjoys writing about Indian cinema. And I have a copy of his book called The Mahatma on Celluloid, which is his first book, which has just come out. And it's been the talk of the town for its distinct subject angle on Mahatma Gandhi. So we're an absolute treat right now on cinema history. We're going to take a minute or two just to get the slides in order, and then we'll begin the session. Hello. It's on.
Are we ready? Yes, I'm Saran. Are you ready? Okay. I'm going to start by saying that we are on opposite sides, seemingly opposite sides of a wall. I come from a literature background. These are historians of cinema, in a way. Now, history is truth. Literature is mainly fiction. Now we are going to make them meet across this panel. I know you are not exactly a historian, but here today you are in the role of a historian. So let's begin with a little bit of an introduction on why I qualify to be sitting here. I have worked, as you know, with a women's magazine, which has nothing to do with cinema. And actually, a lot of people ask me, why is it you write books on cinema? I said, look, just because I work in a women's magazine doesn't mean I don't watch movies and that I'm not passionate about them. And so in my own little way, I have tried to be a historian of Hindi cinema music, because my books have all delved accidentally or by choice, both, on people who have been deeply involved in music and in the process of writing about S.D. Burman or Guru Dutt, or who was an excellent choreographer, and therefore choreographed all his own songs, or Jagjit Singh, or even Hari Prasad Chaurasia, who, if you hear any song in the 60s to the mid-80s almost, any flute you hear is by him in any Hindi film song. So in the process, I have tried to also chronicle the history of cinema through the period that they worked in when music is concerned. So that's why I'm sitting here. But we have experts on the panel. So let's begin with you, Prakash ji. I wanted to ask you, I wanted to also say that there's a lot of tamasha happening. I mean, you go into social media today and it looks like the Oscars are our personal achievement. Each one of us has done something to get that Oscar, you know. Everyone's celebrating it. But this is not the first time Indian cinema has done something wonderful like this. I'm going to read out because I don't remember dates. I did history in school with only one date. 1066, Norman conquest of England. That was the only date. And then 1947, of course. But so I'm going to read this out. I made notes about it. In 1954, Boot Polish won special mention at the Cannes Film Festival for the actress Naz. They said, we have never seen a young child act with such conviction. Sadly, Naz never became a major film star. But that's another matter which you will touch upon. I'm going to come to that. Also, Do Bigha Zameen won the International Award for the best international film at the same festival, the same year. 1956, Pather Panchali won the Best Human Document Award. 1983, Courage, a Mrinal Sen film, won the Best Film Award. Manasa Sahasan, a 1949 film, Malayalam film, won the award. Lunchbox won it, a Critics Award in 2003. Masan won it 2 prizes, including the Most Human Film and the Most Promising Young Film in 2015. And long ago, Chetan Anand for Neecha Nagar won the Grand Prix at Cannes. Not forgetting that Satyajit Ray was also given an award at the Oscars. I don't remember the exact Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah, so he was given that in absentia. So it's not that we have just suddenly been discovered by the West. We've always been doing good work. But the fact is, even with Neecha Nagar, I'm going to come to a subject very close to your heart. Neecha Nagar was never shown in India. And at some point, some reels were found by somebody in a rubbish bin, in a raddi bin, right? So I'm going to come to ask you to talk about, as your tenure in the archives must have shown you, what happens to all those lovely films that we made and the documentation of the history of Indian cinema. Are we good at it, or are we notoriously terrible?
We are not. That is a very frank answer, and let me add to that list which you mentioned is Sant Tukaram. You know, it was in late 30s, one of the top 3 film in Venice Film Festival from the great Prabhat studio. So yes, you know, as far as since we are talking about history, history is written when, you know, the material is available. And if the films are not there, then what history you will talk about? And that's the thing I wish to kind of draw attention to the everybody sitting here, is that, you know, and I will give some statistics. You know, the Indian cinema started in 1913, as you know, Raja Harishchandra. So in the silent era, yesterday Amrendraji was talking about the silent era where there was no sound in the films, there were musicians sitting in front of the screen and there was a live music. So in the silent era, that is 1913 to 1931, so about 20 odd years, there were almost 1,350 films were made. Silent films, silent era films. Can you guess, can anybody guess how many are still remaining? Any wild guess? You are a bit pessimistic. Sorry? No, too generous. So there are only 30 films right now available of that era, and that too in bits and pieces, not films, not full films. So that's the kind of loss I'm talking about, and this is a cinematic heritage. It's our heritage, our cinema. So, and that was the time when, you know, as I mentioned, Raja Harishchandra, 3 prominent film studios were active in that time. One is obviously Dadasaheb Phalke, then there is a Dwarkadas Sampath, Kohinoor studio, one of the major studio, and there was Madan from Kolkata. So, you know, these were the 3 prominent studios. When I was there, when I found that, and Madan was the biggest of them all. And you know, they were not the producer of the film, they were the biggest distributor of the film, they were the importers of the film. At one point of time, they had more than 100 cinema theaters across India. But unfortunately today, there is nothing remains. Such an empire of cinema, you know, house, but nothing remains. And out of these 1,350 films were made, more than, I think, 150 were made by Madan Theatre. So, and there was none in the archive. So, and I was kind of very lucky to find 3 silent films of Madan's, and where they could be found, of all the way in an archive in Paris. So that's the thing, you know, that's the kind of heritage we are talking about. So, and we take pride in, you know, in calling ourselves the largest maker of cinema in the world. But if you look at the, you know, the heritage or the preservation of that, again, just to put it to context, as I told you, 1913 is the one when our film industry in a way started. But the National Film Archive of India, which is a kind of a dedicated institution to preserve the cinema, came into being in 1964. So good 50 years kind of passed for us to realize that there is a need to kind of, there is a need to have a proper system to preserve the films. And you know, yesterday somebody was you know, talking about, and I think that was about the archaeology, that you know, the climate is not suitable, and that is the same you know, holds for the films. Film is what? It's a chemical material. I don't know how many of you have seen the reels, the reels, the cinema reels. It's a chemical material, and what it requires is a dry and cool atmosphere. Unfortunately, we are in such a climatic zone, is that, you know, it literally kind of withers away. So that's the challenge in India about the, you know, preservation scene.
It does send a deep sinking feeling in our hearts, but hopefully now with digital, we will be able to better preserve what is current, and future generations will see it. As someone who has must have watched so many films, being where you were in the archives, what do you think of filmmaking then, the methods, the themes? What were they mostly about?
Well, you know, as I told about the silent cinema, though it's called silent, there was music in it. So in a way, the sound was, you know, involved. But, you know, if you look from the early era, even Phalke used trick scenes. Yes. So there was this, you know, technology coming into play, bit of animation as well, because if that see that film, that B, which develops into it. So it's a very preliminary kind of animation. So as the cinema kind of progressed and as the technology progressed, there were some landmarks in Indian cinema as well. So the sound came in 1931, And then it started to spread also. Initially Bombay was the major kind of cinema center apart from Kolkata, but then Pune and then Chennai, Madras also kind of developed, and then this filmmaking started in other languages also. So when we talk about Alamara, the first Indian talkie, the same year the first Tamil talkie was also made, and incidentally on the same sets of Alamara. So that's how it. Then the color comes into play, and I can take a bit of liberty in talking about my book is also is coming. Okay. So because this technology also kind of keeps coming to the to the cinema, and the content. Initially the silent era, the films were mostly mythological. The subjects were of mythological and Puranas and our own scriptures. But then as cinema progressed, they started telling the stories of society. The social films. So that's how I think the cinema progressed.
Evolved. Arunaraje, I want to ask you, you saw a kind of turning point, or you caused a turning point in the history of cinema by when you decided to be the first woman who did any technical work behind the screen. You did not want to be on the screen, you wanted to run that screen. So there was a lot of, what was it like? Was there turmoil? Was there objection? Did you have people unfolding the red carpet? What was it?
There was no red carpet waiting for me. But you see, girls from good families weren't expected to go to cinema. Even boys, they thought cinema was bad business and it was terrible. You couldn't go there. I was a topper in school. And obviously, I chose to go for medicine. And I joined Grand Medical College in Bombay on merit. And if I can describe you a scene, visualize it. There's a big hall, and there are lots of tables laid out. And you walk into the hall in the morning, in this medical college, and there are dead bodies lying on those tables, and you have to dissect them, you have to cut them up. That was a nightmare. I couldn't deal with that because, I was a bookworm as I was growing up. I was a tomboy as well, climbing on trees and sitting on trees most of half the time. They were looking for me. And for me to do this was just out of the question. My creative juices flowing, I wanted to do something else. And I had, I'm talking of 67. My mother was a very dynamic woman at that time, she was amazing. Now, the best thing that happened to me, though I was a topper, the first time I ever failed in an exam was my anatomy viva. That was expected. And that turned out to be a great turning point. And so I could actually, then she realized that, this girl is not happy, what's happening to her, etc. And I said, I want to be in the movies. So anyway, so people said to her that time, Mrs. Patil, you're ruining your daughter's brilliant career. She would have been a great doctor. So she said, no, my daughter's not frivolous. I want her to be happy. And that's how I landed up at the Film Institute. But coming into the industry was a different cup of tea. Now, people just looked at you like, what is this girl doing here? And look you up and down, chat you, and, just being eye candy and all, because I was a very smart, petite girl, and I very active. But slowly, and you see, the other thing was, I'm making a very general statement, that men don't like to take orders from women. And if you're a director, you are giving the orders, you're captain of the ship. So you say, whatever you say, you ask for, you must have. And that was the hard part, because people were not used to it. And so I had to work 1,000 million times harder than my ex-husband. Initially, we were working together to show them I knew my job. And when they knew I knew my job, all the men were behind me. That's one thing I will say. They'll give me any kind of a shot. Madam, ab bolo. What? You upar se, niche se, kahin se bhi, kuch bhi karenge. So I had to, in a way, win them over by what I was doing, by, working with them. Kande se kande mila ke bolte na. So that is how I ended up. Out of 365 days in a year, 360 days I'm in my jeans and t-shirt, working like one of the guys. And maybe like an occasion like this, I'll come in a sari. Everybody knows that. So, but in the industry itself, it was not easy, because there were only actresses and hairdressers at that time. This was on the spot. But you know, there's a lot of unwanted attention. That's another thing that happens in a lot of places I know, but a lot in the film industry as well. So I think if I were a man, I'd probably have made at least another 10, 20 more films. But it was very hard to go beyond a point. So there were many films that didn't get made. I think I still did pretty well making the films I did.
Just wanted to add to her accomplishment as one of the first technician. As part of researching my book, I was going through the old journals, and there I found a photograph of her receiving the gold medal at the FTI for the best student of that year.
I want to add to what Aruna said before I come to you, Kanchan. We haven't forgotten you. Is that today journalism is full of young women, more women than men. Men go after the more glamorous jobs. They've realized journalism is blood, sweat, and tears. But when my editor in Femina before I took over, Mrs. Patil, was editor, she used to say she was the only woman on the entire floor. So when she would go to accounts to take her check or something, all the accountants would put down their pens and look at her and sigh, because she's very good looking. So there was, ye pari kahan se aa gayi hamare beech mein kind of thing. So I know what you must have gone through. Kanchan, we're going to jump now, chronology.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you, you come from another generation, you come from another time where women have kind of at least cracked, if not broken, many glass ceilings. So tell us what it is like and to be in this space, not in front of camera, but behind camera in many capacities. You've done creative as well as production. So how is it?
Actually, we've come a long way since. So I started my career in the 2000s, which is, post actually what we call the Lagan phase of the industry, because a lot of things changed for the industry after Lagan. It became more professional. We shot sync sound for the first time. Dil Chahta Hai came out in the same year, where a lot of, just representation of women in cinema and also opportunities opening up behind the camera for women happened a lot after that phase. Because the newer voice was coming in. Filmmakers were more interested in telling stories that reflected some sort of emotional reality around them. And now it's very different because after that the corporates came in, and that changed a lot also for people like me. Today in most of the corporate film studios, whether it's television or film or OTT platforms, most of the creative workforce is women. So while on ground also many opportunities have opened up, and you will see women in sound and costume and some directors, although very few. But production, most producers, production teams are led by women, because I think people have just come to realize the discipline and creativity that women bring to the profession. So it's exciting times. We've come a long way from what Aruna ji said and faced, although there is still a long way to go, like I said, in women leading businesses of cinema. Creative roles, yes, there are many opportunities, and I think it's slightly easier for women to do it now, or to sort of get the foot in the door. But business is still largely being led by men, and also very few women directors are there still. So that's something that I think needs to change.
But we wish you all the best, and may your tribe increase.
Thank you.
Prakash ji, we are going to talk about your book. I'd love to see the slide of the book's cover, if that's possible. It's up there? Okay. So I did something quite remarkable yesterday. I went home early from dinner and read your book.
Thank you.
I didn't read all of it. I read 3/4 of it. 2 chapters I skipped through because it was just a line of films, but I did read it, and I think you've done a remarkable job. I knew exactly 6 films on Gandhi. How many films do you know about Gandhi? Come on, audience. 1 or 2? You know Gandhi, Attenborough's Gandhi. Which else do you know? Come on. Okay. Maine Gandhi ko nahi mara. And then? Munna Bhai, of course. Who doesn't know Munna Bhai? And then? Okay. So 5? I knew 5. Gandhi, my father. I didn't know the other one. Okay. And then 9 hours to Rama also. I knew 6. So I'm better than you. But how many have you got?
Well, I didn't count.
I counted somewhat and gave up somewhere because I started feeling sleepy, but you had crossed 45.
Yeah, so that's the man, and that's how I got kind of interested in telling this story. Here is a man who is the most film man in the world, and there is a paradox because he didn't like cinema. Time and again, he had expressed his views that cinema is evil. We shouldn't watch it. There is no value and there is no education from it. But he ended up being filmed one of the most men in the world, and this paradox was what I got attracted to.
I'm going to prompt you to talk about 4 different points. One is the earliest footage of Gandhi in South Africa. Tell them what that was about.
Yeah, so that's another kind of remarkable thing is that, the first, as of now, the first footage available of Mahatma Gandhi on screen is of 1912, and that was the time when he was in Africa. He had invited his political mentor and guru, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, to Africa, and there they are filmed on, at the reception. And this is remarkable. Even the South African industry was at a very nascent stage that time. So here is, and that he was a foreign man in the foreign land, but he was, pound worth filmed. So this is the kind of footage of very few seconds available. It's available now, and I think in public domain. So that's the first time when he appeared on screen, and it's remarkable that it was preserved and found. That's another kind of story. Yeah.
Africa scores. But he was wearing Western clothes in that.
Yes, with Kati turban.
Yeah. But by the time you come to the chapter where you talk about the notorious agitator,
yeah,
tell us about that.
So, as you know, he comes back in 1915, and so this is a very, again, very curious and interesting journey of Gandhi in film and our own freedom struggle also. Because, film industry starts in 1913, and freedom struggle, he comes and then takes the leadership in 1920. So this is the time when he is trying to kind of, gain the leadership, and obviously he comes with these unique programs of foreign clothes bonfire and all those things, which and what he did remarkably was that drawing the general people, which was till then, which was limited to the the drawing rooms and all. So there was, I feel that this was a ready-made material for the screen. There was this hustle and bustle and the bonfire, the drama. So all this thing was, I think, and it got attention of the foreign film studios, and that's how this notorious agitator is the line given by the editor of a newsreel, that they didn't know what to make of this man. Is a very common man, now wearing very few clothes and no kind of cinematic quality to be shown, to be seen on the screen, bony fellow, but that's how they got attracted. They sent the crews to film wherever he was going, and obviously he was drawing crowds. So that's the beauty of that.
So they actually fueled our movement without realizing it.
Exactly.
They gave him social media space. on the screen. What about the first talkie? How did that happen?
And again, that's what I was talking about, the technology part. So we talked about Alamara,
No, for Gandhiji.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So Alamara got released in March 1931. And Gandhiji in talkie, and that is available on YouTube, you can watch it, that was filmed in April 1931. So just few days, 1 month, 1.5 months after the talkie, the technology comes in Indian cinema, and here the crew of Fox Movie Tone, then the biggest Hollywood film studio, who were the leaders in the newsreel production, they decide to send a crew to film Mahatma Gandhi and not only capture the picture but also record his sound. This happens in a village called Borsad in Gujarat, and they come with this entire, because the technology was new, so it was a very heavy equipment, and it was laden on the bullock cart, and that comes to the house where Gandhiji was staying, and they record. And it was such a phenomenal kind of movement in the history. The next day, New York Times records it as a triumph of cinema, because they think that making Gandhiji talk on camera was a triumph of cinema, and it was hailed. There are 3 or 4 magazines of Hollywood. They devoted 2 full pages to kind of showcase this kind of development, that even Gandhiji was persuaded to kind of grant the interview and record. So this is another kind of wonderful achievement for the cinema industry.
Right.
Also.
It's a milestone,
Yeah.
and indeed the power of cinema. And then you go on to talk about films like 9 Hours to Rama, 5 Past 5, all those films that were made, and it continues. I mean, Gandhiji continues to be the focus of cinema even after his death. I mean, the entire procession, talk about how that was covered.
Well, and that's the another kind of documentation of what we see today of Gandhiji's the last remains procession is the handiwork of 2 cameramen. One is Indian, one is British. Mr. Ved Prakash is the Indian cameraman who used to work for British Movie Tone, one of the major newsreel company. And John Turner was specifically flown in by Lord Mountbatten, because it was obviously clear that India was going to gain the independence. So he had an eye for publicity. So he wanted to film these entire proceedings in the run-up to the India's independence. So he was there, but unfortunately, and he was a regular visitor to Birla House where Gandhiji was staying. On that particular day, he had gone, and he had gone to watch a movie. And suddenly, when he was watching a movie, the screening was halted, and then it was announced that such and such thing has taken place. So he rushed. But that day, he didn't have the film stock, which is required to shoot. So what he did, and Ved Prakash and they were friends. So overnight, they kind of collected, again by hook or crook, about 3,000 feet of film stock, and then they shot. So, and they divided the things between them. So Mr. Ved Prakash shot the footage at Birla House, and Mr. John Turner, she shot it at the Rajghat. So what we see today is the handiwork of these 2 cameramen. And in all these documentaries on and other programs, this is the procession which is shown. It is not only limited to the procession. The ashes immersion ceremonies, which kind of were held across India in different parts of the country, they were extensively filmed. And as a part of research, I found one of the newsreel which kind of there's a 2-reel footage which traces this journey from Madras to Rameshwaram. The train takes that special train takes that ashes. Beautiful footage, a very poignant footage where people are standing on the tracks with folded hands and they are waiting for this ashes. So this is also very extensively filmed. So almost half of my book is devoted to the newsreels, because the kind of newsreels which has been filmed on Gandhiji is tremendous.
Correct. I wish we could have shown some of it here, but that's not possible. And then you talk about the films that he influenced, the social dramas, you know, Do Aankhein Barahat, and films before that, Achut Kanya, and Boot Polish, and even RK films, Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai, and all the way up to Munna Bhai MBBS, you know. So I think it's a wonderful book. I would really, really say that if you want to know Gandhi through cinema, this book has to be read. It is a slice of history. And I really enjoyed. I'm going to read it again very carefully and not overnight.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to come to you into a very, very different aspect of portrayal. Now we've portrayed a Mahatma as a human being, as an agitator, as a role model, everything. What about women? What was women, how were women being portrayed in your time when you joined the industry? What did you do to change it as a director? And how was that successful?
Yeah, initially when cinema started, we take it for India, when Dada Saheb Phalke. At that time, women were not even allowed to act in movies. So the people you see, Raja Harishchandra, are men. And you see, after that, women said, what's the big deal? I mean, we can do it. And so first from his family, and then other people started acting. So from 1913 to 1920, the women were already acting. And now, you want to put these things up, the visuals, so that you can... Yes, she knows, she's got the thing. Initially, while I'm talking, we can have just the... where's the mic?
That is Aruna's memoir, which has amazing stories. I'm going to tell you a story from it. I won't ask her to tell it. She won't say it as well as I will. So I'll tell you the story.
We'll see the one, the history. We'll just go to the history of that, which is the black and white.
While they're starting that, let me tell you about how Harishchandra found his Taramati in Dada Phalke's film. They put up an ad saying, we want someone who's delicate and fair to come. And the first man they got was dark, hairy with one eye. And he said, I have played Taramati on stage. I am your Taramati. With great difficulty, Phalke got rid of him. And he couldn't find a Taramati. He tried getting women. People chased him out of their homes. They would actually say, Phalke aa raha hai, darwaza band karo. Ladki ko utha ke le jayega. You know, that kind of thing. And finally, he was at a restaurant and he saw the waiter's hands. And he said, what delicate hands. So he said, will you act in my film? Will you be my Taramati? He said, nahi. He said, tumko kitna paisa milta hai? 4 paisa. Hum 8 paisa dega. So that is how he found his Taramati. His name was Salunke. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this was how it was. And it was, as I said, as you can see, women started acting, and till the 30s, 70% were mythological films. As he also said, the stories of from Bharat and all the Puranas and all the stories, and made in different languages. Every few years, the same story would be made again. So you'll find many examples of the same story. And there were also a collaboration with Germans. There was Franz Osten and many other, 2 or 3 other guys, and they made Satyavan Savitri. You know, Nala Damayanti, where, she actually fights with Yama and brings her dead husband back. You have heard that. So it was a lot of, and women were portrayed in a particular way, like they were very strong, they had character, and there was a lot of substance to the characters they played. But one thing, because you see in India, I must say this, we are India of many Indias actually. On one side, women are treated as mother, looked up as mother goddess. And on the other hand, she's just like a domestic slave or a child bearer or just somebody who can provide sex. So this is how women are actually looked at. And it still exists. So as you get older, you move to the other side. But until then, You're looked at objectification of women sexually is a very big thing, and cinema is very visual. So there's a lot of what you call scopophilia, where you want to observe women, observe their bodies, observe sex happening. So this was all very much there. So after this, the next thing was, just move to the next one and we'll see how things changed. Yeah, then there were films which social dramas began to increase, and you have all these people, and then, by about the 40s, 50s, there was a Western influence. Then there was this pampered daddy's daughters who wore Western clothes, had short hair. You'll see a Nargis over there. At the same time, you will see there were very Indian stories also, with the typical Indian women characters happening. We'll go to the next one. I just put this together in a hurry. Yeah. And then in the 70s, by the time, please go ahead, yeah. Just keep going, yeah. It's like, then came Mother India at 57. And so on. There were a lot of films which had very strong women characters. If you look at the earlier characters, whether it was a Madhubala or a Meena Kumari or a Nutan, they had things to do in the film. But later on, with the coming of color, something exploded. The people there were less substance, I would say, and more of so-called entertainment, song, dance, foreign locations and everything. And the women's roles really got reduced to such an extent you'll be horrified, because there were all these, every film, there came a formula. When the color came after that actually emerged a formula in this, where there would be a compulsory rape. And this rape had to be titillating. And it was so wicked, because, sometimes they would ask the actor the girl to do the rape, and they would tell the villain in the film, ki ye kar dalo, koi baat nahi karo, jo bhi hai, whatever they would tell him. And the man would actually go at the girl, and she's waiting for someone to say cut. He wouldn't say cut. And she said, but ye to bola nahi tha ki he will tear my clothes, he'll do this and do that and everything. And they say, ha, mil gaya shot. So this was how it was. It was terrible those days. Even in a film like, Smita Patil, when she did that, Rapate Rapate, she came home and cried. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen that song. Rapate Rapate Jaye to, she came and cried. She was a very close friend of mine. But what happened also in the 70s, early parallel cinema came about, because all this was happening, and people who were sensitive, sensible, wanted to make a different kind of cinema, brought in parallel cinema. And of course, the two main torchbearers of parallel cinema was Smita Patil and Shabana Azmi. Shabana was there. She did a lot of films, Ankur and Nishant and all of those, and Shabana portraying, you would remember her, Manthan or Bhumika. Extraordinary work, and very realistic, very rooted substance. But as it went on, the substance was going out. There was also, earlier I'll show you some clips also, very small, short clips. You take, for example, there used to be a vamp. And the vamp would have a cigarette sometimes, or have a glass of wine or something, and she would dance and she would go for the hero, so that created the triangle. But what happened was, as days went past, the vamp's role got reduced. Poor thing, she was knocked out, and the heroine started wearing the same kind of clothes, doing everything that the vamp was doing. So you see, cleavages were coming down, hemlines were going up, and there was very little left to the imagination. And absolutely substance was going up. And I will show you that other thing, what happened. By the 80s, I didn't even want to look at the 80s, because after that, it was all gone. And can we see that other one? That other one, that Bollywood. The rain songs had to be there. Item numbers had to be there. Now look at what rain songs and item numbers look like. And so the position of women, the women-centric films went down.
For the clip, can we have
No, this is not, this one is a PPT, but I'll show you. Look at this. Just look at this. All your favorite heroines would have to go through this. And of course, there were the rain songs. You did the item numbers? Yeah. All right.
There's the famous story about how Mandakini was chosen.
That's right.
under a waterfall.
Yeah, and there are lots and lots of stories about all this. So it was very difficult. And, Gina Davis, I don't know how many of you heard of Gina Davis. They did some studies on the portrayal of women. And they took a lot of countries where a lot of cinema is very popular everywhere. And they found that less than 30% of women had women speaking roles. No voice, no speaking for women. Just show them. 30% and less. So, and of course, India was much worse. India and the US was the worst. Because what India did is, feature films, they took a model of Hollywood. And in Hollywood, that one time they believed cinema is for men, made by men, and women are to be seen. Like you say, women see them, don't hear them, just see them. So it was like that. I'm putting it in a nutshell, but this is how it was. And these studies revealed a lot of things. These studies also revealed how small the participation of women behind the screen was. And recently, TISS has done the studies, and it's less than 10%. I mean, writers, yes, 15%. Right, there are more writers. Yeah, now they're getting into production a little more. And directors, very few. Camera persons, very few. Sound, very few. And so that's the situation. And yeah, now I want to show you the kind of...
But can I quickly intervene and say that while, yes, most of what we call Bollywood cinema, mainstream cinema, was going downhill, we did have in the 60s definitely Bimal Roy, who did Sujata, who did Bandhini, who gave Nutan.
That is why I said, when color came before that was, like Gurudutt and Bimal Roy were really my teachers. They were my real teachers because I learned from them, and they respected women. Even if the hero was the protagonist, the woman had some substance to her character.
No, in Pyasa, it is a sex worker who gets the main role.
That's absolutely. So they made amazing films, and that was those times. But much later, and if you say 2,000 films we make India, out of which Hindi films are like 200, but it's so misrepresented because Bollywood is not Indian cinema. I mean, it's part of it. And in Hindi cinema, if you say, I'm not saying women-oriented films or women with importance or women with a fair amount of just representation is not there, but there are very, very few. Out of 200 films, I think there'll be just a handful which may be having good women-centered roles or just roles where they have something to say or do. So this is something, and which coming to Rihai. Rihai was a film I made in the late 80s, because this had gone crazy by the 80s. And the film was women have also sexual needs. Women have needs. And people were horrified. Arey, kitna bold film hai. And this woman has done it and all, And women were not even allowed to go to the theatre in Bhopal and Lucknow and places like that. But the film was, it had a balance. It was not that men are bad. No, it says, listen to the women. Women also are human beings. Accept them. So inside of that, there are very interesting stories about,
I'm going to tell that story.
Which one?
The one when we were launching her book, we had Hemaji launching the book, okay? So the first thing she said was, when we talked about Rihai, she said, I was shooting for Rihai, and she wanted me to do scenes with Vinod Khanna that were intimate. I said, मुझे घर धर्म जी के पास जाना है, and Vinod Khanna said, no way, धर्म पापा एक हाथ मारेगा खत्म. I'm not going to do those scenes. That was the first story. The second story, Dharam would ask her, what are you shooting these days? She says, मैंने कभी नहीं बताया. कैसे बताऊं? That I'm shooting about a theme like this. He says, I couldn't even tell him about it.
On the other hand, there was this love scene between Nasir and Hema. And so I told her, I prepped them both up and they were ready to go. So we shot. And Nasir is not doing anything. Then I said, this is not working out, because he's supposed to, at least he was supposed to kiss her neck and all. Those days, we didn't have kissing on the lips and all. You just nuzzled a bit and did all these things. It was okay, or you found yourself lying together in a bed or something like that. And I said, let's reshoot tomorrow. Let's do this again tomorrow. Next day also he's doing the same thing. And Hemaji asking me, आपने Nasir ये सब करने वाला बोला था, उसने कुछ किया नहीं. So I said, Nasir, क्या हुआ? आपको ऐसे क्यों कर रहे हो? He said, क्या सोच रहे हो आप? He said, धर्म जी मुझे मारेंगे. I said, it's crazy. But the thing is, I made the film and selling it was impossible, very difficult. I'll tell you two little interesting anecdotes. And you see, Europe, you know, most of this business, film business, was done in hotel rooms. You know, these distributors would come, and at night they would sit and discuss over wine and women and God knows what. And here was this woman, you know, in her jeans running around trying to sell her film. So they said, finally they said, we can't do business with a woman. I said, problem क्या है? आप X बोल रहे हो, मैं Y बोल रही हूँ. X और Y के बीच में कर देते हैं ना final. No, it didn't happen. So finally I had to take a male colleague of mine, male friend of mine, to go with me to meet them and get the contracts done. It was that difficult. Then vesting, one more thing I want to tell you. Sorry, I'm taking time. Yeah. So one other thing was a press conference. They are coming to my press conference. They are drinking my wine, eating my food. Instead of asking me sensible questions, they're asking me, you know, one of the guys said, what do you want? You want sleeping rights? I said, who can give home sleeping rights? Whoever wants to sleep with anyone sleeps with anyone. So rights can't there either. So what do you mean? So the second one stood up and said, you are spoiling our women. I said, oh, wow, cinema has such power. Wonderful, it has some power. Of course, it can influence. But by now, we would have been a different country, different people, different... Where would the civilization have gone if cinema could impact that much change, you know, if it could? But he said, I said, let me ask you a question. Every community, every group of, every bunch of people, koi na koi adultery karta hai. Somebody or the other sleeps with somebody out of turn, right? So I said, in your group, when people do that, do you sleep with somebody from your group, somebody's wife, somebody's sister, or do you go to the red light area? What could he do? Because you have to confront it head on. Because pretending it doesn't exist doesn't help. And it is normal. And today, if you see what OTT is doing, is they've gone to the other extreme. You can see anything and everything you want to see in the last bit of detail. So, but this is how things have changed, because you see there's an extreme reaction now. And we have to find our own way. As women, I feel, behind the screen or on the screen, we have to find our way, what gives us dignity, what gives us respect, and what allows us to express ourselves the way we want to express, without any compunctions, you know, like do whatever.
You have clips.
Clips, yeah. Quickly we'll see the clips. Yeah.
Let's watch these two clips, then I come to you, Kanchan.
Yeah, right. We see, I want to show you 1935 film, Duniya Na Mane. It was called Cuckoo in Marathi also. It was a bilingual. And this woman stands up, you know, when somebody wants to destroy a woman, demolish a woman, he'll use a four-letter word. And that's how she stands up against this. It's a 35 film, just watch it.
क्यों खड़ा है? बढ़ आगे।
आप मुझे मारना चाहते हैं?
केशव क्या देखता है? अरे लगा। फिर खड़ा का खड़ा। नहीं रे, तेरे हाथ से ये नहीं होगा। नहीं दिखाती हूँ तमाशा।
हाँ, रख दो छड़ी। मुझे मारने का तुम्हें हक नहीं।
मुंह फोड़ केशव, मुंह फोड़।
बेगुनाह पर हाथ उठाने के लिए कलेजा चाहिए।
अरे केशव, तेरी जवान मर्दी कहाँ गई? चाची, आप तो मेरी इज्जत रखिए। क्या मुझे बच्चा समझती हैं? आप यहां से जाइए। आखिर नहीं पूरी ना। अच्छा बाबा, जाती हूं।
लीजिए, मारिए, पति का हक अदा कीजिए।
पति का हक? और तू बड़ा पतिव्रता धर्म पाल रही है।
संसार में जब बूढ़े मर्दों ने भी नीति और धर्म छोड़ दिया तो औरतें ही अपना धर्म क्यों संभालें?
तू जैसी बेशरम छिनाल से कौन लड़ाए?
छिनाल? ठहरो, जबान की छुरी से जख्म करके कहां चले? नहीं, मैं तुम्हें कभी नहीं जाने दूंगी। तुम्हें अपने कंधे शब्द सच करके दिखाने होंगे, नहीं तो मुझसे माफी मांगनी होगी। मैं अबला हूँ, हिंदुस्तान में पैदा हुई हूँ, तुम्हारे बस में हूँ, लेकिन इंसान हूँ। मुझसे ये गंदा गम सहन नहीं होगा। कहिए, मुझमें छिनालपने की कौन सी बात है? यहाँ आने पर मैंने किसी खत लिखा, किस पर हम ऐसे हंसी, किसी से भी पूछिए। घर के सामने मैंने जो बाग लगाया है, इससे क्या जाहिर होता है? या मेरा ये कमरा, ये छिनाल की जगह है? ऐसे गंदे शब्द निकालते हुए तुम्हें लाज न आई? आपको मुझ पर गुस्सा था, मेरी इज्जत पर नहीं। मेरा खून बहाना था, आग से जलाना था, मगर दिल में बेइज्जती के जख्म न करना था। कोई भी ये गंदा शब्द वेश्या को भी कहने के लिए शर्माता होगा, मगर आपने मुझे कहा।
निर्मला देवी, मुझे माफ करो।
That's a rare statement from a man, huh? Anytime. Okay, Kanchan, we are going to go.
Just to add to, I don't know how many of you have identified the actress. Her name is Shanta Apte, and she is one of the most extraordinary actor I have come across as in the Indian film industry. This film is late 30s, I believe.
1935.
35, and she was at that time one of the leading actresses of Prabhat, and she was in mid-20s at the time, and she wrote a book called Zaumi Cinemat in Marathi. And what is that book about? It is a book about the entire insider account of the film industry, how the film production happens, how film distribution happens, who are the exhibitors. So naturally it was, a very, very explosive kind of a material. So nobody was willing to publish it. So she self-published it. So that's the kind of, woman she was.
I think Shambhanigal's Bhumika was kind of based on her.
No, that was Hansa Wadkar.
Oh, Hansa Wadkar, sorry. I not only mix up dates, I mix up names also. Okay, we're coming to you, Kanchan. Now, you have worked in cinema as a creative director, as an assistant director. You've also worked as a producer. Do you select the themes or the films that you choose to work in, or is it something that happens organically?
So one of the jobs is to select scripts to be produced, and of course every creative producer, director in a studio, because most of my experience has been in a commercial film studio, there are multiple considerations, most of which are commercial, but I think your own personality and choices also come into play, mostly in not selecting things versus selecting, but you definitely can say, okay, this is something that I'm not going to approve of. Or
Can you give us an example? Was there something that you really took objection to?
So, sex comedies, for example, and there was a phase of sex comedies, and some of them did really well commercially, but, just as a team, we said, okay, this is not something that resonates with us. We don't want to watch it, so we are assuming nobody else wants to watch it. But I also just want to add to what Arunaji was saying. In the 1980s, when, this representation of women and family just kind of disappeared from films, the industry actually almost shut down. The theatrical business shut down. So that's also the influence of the women audiences on cinema, as we see, that they didn't want to go and watch these films. And therefore, most of this happened, then the business moved to VHS and piracy happened. And so there was that whole phase of the 1980s where nobody was going to theaters. And then in the 90s when Hum Aapke Hain Kaun was coming out, which was a big family film, very different for the kind of other films that were coming out that time. The Rajshri people had to tell cinema halls to fix their exhibition places, fix the halls, make them more family friendly, make them clean, make them a place where families can come and watch and women feel safe to come and watch these films. So there was that little turning point, and therefore I think today, just before COVID actually, in 2017-18, women formed 55% of the cinema going audience, which is again a huge reflection on what we see in films today. The character representation, I'm not only talking about, like she said, women-oriented films, but just in general representation of women in films became different. I mean, I worked on films like Queen, there was a Kahani, even in a film like Gangs of Wasseypur, which was a gangster film, the women characters were, very powerful and had a huge influence on the story. So I think that's also like a chicken and egg situation where earlier, I mean, if women are not allowed to go watch films, then those films are only for men. And therefore the gaze becomes very male, and then objectification happens, which happened through 80s and early 90s. So just wanted to add that.
I was going to say, earlier they used to have multi-kerchief films. Rone Dhone ka film, so that women could go and have a catharsis. And I'm not joking, it's true. Because you couldn't talk about mother-in-law problems or sister-in-law problems or husband problems at home. You didn't have a femina to talk to in those days. So you had to go to the movie hall. They used to have, I was in Hyderabad as a college student at that time, and Thursdays were Zanana days, where only women were allowed to go and see movies because they were parda women. So a lot of women would go and they would carry a bag full of kerchiefs. Because Rone Dhone ka film mein khoob ro ke fir ghar jao. World will be fine. You can tackle anything for the next week at least. So that was, I think, very important. And I think, as you say, both of you said, the presence of women watching films affects not only the theme but the economy of the industry itself.
Yes, definitely. And I think if there's a balance, then definitely it'll make a big difference. But unfortunately, there is no balance. And
but talk to us about Helen. You told me a very nice story today.
No, I mean, Helen was I still say she's such a sweetheart because everyone loved seeing Helen. Men, women, everyone would love to see her dance. So when she started, if everybody, you remember Mera Naam Hai Chin Chin Choo, that song? And she's all fully clothed and she's so sweet and so coy and everything. And then, you come to a film like Monica, My Darling, she's still decently clothed. By the time she comes to Sholay in 75, she's got very little on. I've got 3 clips just to see. I mean, really, it's, I don't know, just see if them. Arsh, where are you?
Helen clips.
Yeah.
These are some of Kanchan's films.
Okay.
They went. Lights, please. Lights.
Huh? The first one is Mera Naam Chin Chin Choo. The 3 small ones.
Baba डीजे का दिल लाई सिंगा तुरका धूकन मेरा खंघाई की अंगड़ाई ऊपर रख ले हाथ जगह उठ जाए ना पागल की मुर्रा नाम तू 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 बाबा तू 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 रात बांधने में और तू हल्ला कर हम दूध मुर्रा नाम तू 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 बाबा तू 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 रात बांधने में और तू हल्ला कर हम दूध.
So this is every, those days they used to have this so-called club dance. And the club dance became later on the item number. And then you know what happened from Helen to the...
I noticed two things in this clip. Huh? Fashions are cyclical. Notice her sleeves? I'm horrified.
The next clip is...
May I add one Helen story, if it is okay?
We have two more clips, then you add it.
Okay.
Yeah, the second one is Monica, my darling. Monica, oh my darling.
Are you guys enjoying the clips?
Yeah, because
Good.
you see, you had a lot of good live music. No, not this, not this. This is...
So much energy. She's well, she had an amazing collection of body stockings and black fishnet stockings. She had this collection and she'd bring it out for she almost made her own wardrobe. And she made sure she didn't show flesh. Till the next clip.
Yeah, sure. Now, where in Gabbar's this thing she's doing all that? Don't ask, but... Picturized as time went, close-ups of the anatomy, and then all kinds of movements, pelvic thrusts and other thrusts and all kinds of thrusts and so on, just to draw attention to the male audience.
Just, as you said, the kind of draw Helen was during that time. I have a very unusual and bizarre story of Helen and Gandhi film. So I don't know how many of you seen a film called Sachai. This film came in 1969 and supposedly to kind of propagate the message of Gandhian values. So there are two characters. One is played by Sanjeev Kumar and other is by Shammi Kapoor. And they are both friends, and then they go different ways. And one is good guy, another is bad boy. And then at the end of the film, they come together, and there is a statue of Gandhi, and they kind of meet, and they kind of become friends once again. But the director obviously thought that the story is not going to sell, so he gets a Helen dance number in the film. And and this is a Helen dance. It's obviously available on YouTube. You can watch it. So what they did, they made Helen dance in a liquor glass, and a life-size statue of the glasses were made. They were transported from Mumbai to Madras in the studio, and she was made to splash her feet in a fake liquor. And in the advertisement of this film, they say that this is the world's costliest dance item ever picturized. So this is the kind of, I don't know what to call it, but this film came in 1969, which is the Gandhi's birth centenary year.
Yeah, because they'll use anything for business. So you see why we make films, why people make films. There are three different approaches. For some people it is art, pure art. You want to express yourself. So for some people it's communication, you want to say something, so you want to express yourself through your stories or storytelling, or you're a storyteller. And the other is pure business for a lot of people. And so, they do what they feel they need to do just to get the 100 crore club was long gone, it's a 1,000 crore club now, 500 to kab ka nikal gaya. So it's all big money, big talk, big whatever. So, small films, substance films, people don't really care because it just comes and goes, and it doesn't even last, those films. But at that point, it does make the money for the persons, whatever they're doing. Because storytelling will never go out of fashion. Mm-hmm. Stories, we've always heard stories, generation after generation after. And if you person tells a good story, I feel the film stands a good chance. Yeah.
Yeah, but a very sobering thought I want to share with you. After RRR came and it became this big hit and everything, at the Ladli Awards, there was this little girl, 12-year-old girl who was doing rap. She lived in Dharavi, which is Asia's biggest slum. And they are known for being rappers. So she came and she was doing a rap number, and two of her lines was, "Aajkal ke hero anti-gravity defying hai. Anti-gravity heroes hai hamare cinema mein." So a child of that age had the perception to realize ki ye sab bakwas hai. But then the film is a hit. So what does it tell about us adults? I wonder. Prakash, before I go to Kanchan, you have written also a book on women in Indian cinema. I haven't seen it. Can you tell me a little about it?
Basically, this is a pictorial book which we did it for the publication division of Government of India. It tells the stories of prominent women artists in Indian cinema. So it's not only on Hindi cinema, but there are artists like as I said, Marathi, and then Bengali, and then South cinema. Very prominent artists, and not only the actors but the singer artists, and like Kanan Devi, who was one of the biggest draw.
Is Aruna in it? Is Aruna in it?
No, I think we stopped at a particular time, and mostly it was, I think, to do with the I think till 60s, I think we stopped. It's a pictorial book, so we basically the images and few lines about the their accomplishments. So what it tried to tell is that the kind of transition it has undergone in terms of the portrayal of women in Indian cinema, and it encompasses all the film industries. It's not only the Hindi one. Yeah.
Kanchan, I want to ask you a little bit about, because he talked about women in other cinemas and all, you have done some work in regional cinema too?
Yes.
So tell us about how different is it to work in regional cinema as against Hindi mainstream cinema?
Actually, to begin with, it's, I mean, I've only done Marathi films apart from Hindi, and it's a humbler industry. I mean, it doesn't start with, when you come from a commercial corporate company as a producer, everything, your life revolves around stars and their dates. And, you know, the acting talent or sometimes even the script comes at the cost of star dates, which was very different in a Marathi film setup. You know, people are far more accessible. They are open to discussion. They want to tell different kind of stories, which is also something to do with, okay, they don't have that pressure of a 100 crore star that they need to put in stunts and songs and, you know, all of that. So they are able to tell stories which are, you know, different and closer to reality, or have more of a heart than formula. So that was really interesting. I worked on a film called Ani Dr. Kashinath Ghanekar, which was...
it's a lovely film, I've seen it.
Which was a huge learning experience for me also, because, you know, just the way we wrote that film and the way we shot it in such less budget. And I mean, as compared to other Marathi films, I think we had a higher budget, but even though as compared to a Hindi film, the budget was very little. And the kind of actors that came together to make that film happen. You know, there was no sort of competitive animosity about who's playing which character, am I the lead or not. They just came together because it told the story of a great artist. And, you know, it was told with a certain lens which didn't glorify him, but also celebrated him, but also he was a flawed character. So it was a very unique film for me, because in Hindi films you rarely get to see flawed characters, or, you know, where two heroes are not competing with each other. So that was really interesting. And I mean, I've watched a whole lot of Marathi cinema growing up, which is incredibly different from what there's a limitation to Hindi films that regional cinema kind of crosses over, which is really interesting.
I think we used to watch when we were, when I was in school or college, I don't remember, every Sunday afternoon I sacrificed my sleep to watch what Doordarshan used to show. And now, thanks to Netflix and Prime, we can watch Malayalam, Kannada, and there are some real gems over there.
Absolutely. You know,
the real gems of films.
Yeah, the freedom regional cinema gives you, you can't do it in even my last film. It was a Marathi film, basically, but I set it in Bombay story. So there's Marathi, English, and Hindi spoken. But I can't make it in Hindi because everything will change, and what will get destroyed is the substance, the core, the story, everything will go. Yes. That's why we chose to make it in Marathi, yeah.
Yeah, the creative integrity and the voice of the creator is far more preserved in a regional film than in a Hindi film.
Absolutely.
Prakash,
I'm glad regional cinema is there, because we are all watching, look at the Malayalam films, they are so amazing, because they are telling small stories and big stories and any kind of stories, and they're not worried. Yesterday only we were discussing with Prakash, the freedom that is there for a maker to make any kind of story you want to make, because cinema also is a very major expression.
Prakash, let's take it to what we have learned from, or what we have given to international cinema, world cinema, even Hollywood for that matter, maybe. Song and dance is something that seems to be infectious.
Well, I think I would go beyond that. And obviously, the films of Ray, Ghatak, and Adur, Gopal Krishnan and all, because they are the ones, I think, they took Indian cinema literally, introduced them to the kind of stories and the content which were told through these films. And I think they literally kind of transcended that obviously language, cinema has no language, but the kind of storytelling they kind of developed, because this was a very different from the other cinema being made. So I think these and they kind of they started that entire movement, and it had a lot to do with the exposure also, because all these filmmakers, they were, inspired by the, the successive International Film Festival of India, which were, held in India. And then they kind of got to see the Bicycle Thieves and all other, the classics, the world cinema classics. And then they realized that, we need to tell our own stories. And that's how I think you mentioned some of the films, and I would add V. Shantaram also to it, and Gurudutt is, I know, fortunately is now being rediscovered. These are some of the, not in that, league, but, middle of the road, we can call it, but at the same time powerful storytelling, and which is rooted in, Indian ethos. So I think these are the, and then obviously then there are long list of, names, John Abraham, then Arvindan. So, these are the, and then comes this, as Arunaji told about this parallel, cinema, which is, Shyam Benegal and others. So that is the one I think they really kind of introduced what Indian cinema all is about. I think song and dance is obviously is
no,
unique,
but I was
unique feature. Yeah,
I wanted you to talk about the technical aspect, but I'll come to that. I want to share a story from, because you mentioned Gurudutt. It's part of my book, and of course I'm hard selling my book. But what happens is when Abrar Sahab is asked to shoot Sahib Bibi Ghulam, he's made the director of Sahib Bibi Ghulam, and he shot the first scene with Meena Kumari's face. And Gurudutt says, "Dikhao, rushes, dikhao." And Abrar Sahab is sitting like this, saying, "Kya ho gaya, kya ho gaya?" He thinks he's not going to manage it as a director. And he says, "What has gone wrong?" He says, the scene before I show Meena Kumari, the character is saying, "Chand mein bhi daag hai, par uspe kuch hai hi nahi. Choti bahu mein daag nahi hai, wo to bilkul bhaddi lag rahi hai." So he says, "How can Meena Kumari look terrible?" He says, "Aap aake dekho." So Gurudutt looks at it and he says, "Sachmuch bhaddi lag rahi hai." So that is where the whole lesson Abrar says he got on how to use camera lenses, and said that because Meena Kumari has a broad face, you have used this lens, and it's broadened her face and it's made it, distorted it. So, and then they set up a signal, because Meena Kumari says, "My right side profile is better than the left side. 3/4 is better." So they put up a signal, कि ऐसे छुएगी तो left लेना और ऐसे छुएगी तो right लेना. So all kinds of things. I mean, so I wanted to actually ask you, what are the technical, exchanges that may have happened?
I'm not an authority on that, but I can give one small anecdote, because you were talking about lenses. When V. Shantaram made his film Pinjra in Marathi, which was a color film, so obviously the infrastructure, the cinema infrastructure in villages where the movie was going to be watched was not really the, of the top of the quality. So what he did, in some of the major centers, he got the lenses imported and got them inserted in the projectors, so that people should watch, the colors in the way he wanted, them to see. So that's the, I think the kind of care as an artist he kind of had. Yeah. So and that's the thing, and the technical part of, as you said, Mr. V.K. Murthy was the one who kind of made Gurudutt's dream come alive. But at the same time, there is another kind of, because Arunaji is from the Film Institute, the kind of technical expertise, which came into the cinema industry, that they have really kind of changed the, the way cinema looks. For example, I don't know how this is true, but this was an anecdote told to me by somebody whom I know. Yash Chopra's film before Manmohan Singh comes, as a cinematographer, and after that. So you can see the stark contrast in the way, the technical part of it is played out.
Yeah. Because I remember a couple of things, when we made our first film, Shak, now there was no standardization in the projectors. Now, so we said, okay, where is the film going to be? See, we're going to do 12 prints in Bombay. So it's all different. So we actually sat in the lab. We said this projection is dark, so we have a brighter print for this theater. For Eros, we have a lighter print, and so like that. But when it went to the B centers, people saw what they saw and didn't see what they didn't see, literally, because you see, we were playing with light. Now, for example, anyone, if I want to give you an example, like for Sathya Saran, how many of you have seen Sathya Saran? The camera work of that, or even a Godfather. Lighting is used to express so much. It's part of storytelling, it's part of cinema. Now, if you shoot like that with less light or, with darkened shade, and then it has to be also seen. And if the reproducing system, your projector is not able to show, then it's a big loss. So, as you said, one more thing happened with us with Chennai. With my first film, after I came out of the institute, first editing, I edited a film for Girish Karnad and B.V. Karanth. It was called Vamshruksha. And they were afraid. This was their first film also. They were afraid to come into the editing room, said, you do whatever. And they would say, because just in case I found mistakes, and I told them what's happening. So the thing is, I'll tell you two small incidents if you have the time. Yeah. So one of the things was, even the heroine was a young, fresher, she had not acted. And she's supposed to be a village. And old Brahmin's house, she's a young widow. And the old man keeps talking to her, this old Brahmin, and every time her eyebrows would shoot up like that. And, what are we going to do with this material? And Girish told me I wanted to draw a line round the room saying, no eyebrows to go up beyond this point. Because her eyebrows would go like that until she got used to, the character and role. So now I'm looking at it, beginning of the film. These are the first few days of shoot, and she's doing that. She's not speaking much. So what I did, when the camera starts, like those days, the film, it takes time for the camera to catch speed before it can run at a regular, proper rate. So she's waiting here blank, and the guy says, lights, then camera's on, and then you wait, then the clap, and you're waiting to say action. So while she was just waiting like that blank, I used those strips of film and inserted, like she's listening to the old man without the eyebrows, but like blank. Poor widow. She got an award, I got an award, Girish got an award, all of us got awards. So this is using your brains, like, because you know how to do the job. The second thing was, there's a standard leader. If you notice, there is the numbers that come when the film starts. You have a leader. It's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, like that. So those days, celluloid, you had a picture was on a separate roll and sound was on a separate roll. And then when you went for your final mixing, your music and your dialogues and your effects and all these little effects and other effects, you make it into one track, and you used to call it a married print. It was what was released in the theater was one married print. It had all picture and sound. It used to have both picture and sound. So what happened was the lab in Mysore. Mysore, one small lab, the whole print was out sync. I'm talking, my sound comes 2 minutes later, things like that. And they said, ye film institute ke log, what? Can film be taught in a college or school or something like that? So I said, let's see what has happened. Now, because I knew my job, what we did, we transferred the whole soundtrack on a 35 magnetic tape, matched it, and we went through without spending it. I said, if it's my fault, I will pay for the entire thing. Imagine those days, I don't know where. But I said, because I was so confident about what I did. So technically, FTII actually, the training that they brought in made a big difference to everything that we did, innovation. But of course, now people have really, in the space, things have opened up a lot. People are doing, and especially animation and all, India is contributing so big. In terms of special effects and animation, everybody comes, the whole world comes to us.
It's like in fashion, they come to us for embroidery. All embroidery, every big fashion house comes to India because labor is cheap and it's fabulous. And our designers go to Dubai to pick up fabric from there. Kanchan, what is the future? What do you think is the future? I mean, we have Vishal Bharadwaj, whose posters are saying he shot an entire film on a phone. So is that the future, or is cinema dead in the big theaters? Is it all going to be getting smaller and smaller so you can watch it on your phone only? What is it? What do you see?
I was just going to say, Arunaji, we still have the same problem of projection because now we don't know phone ka brightness hoga ki nahi hoga. Laptop kaun se quality ka hai, kuch nahi pata, because now everybody is watching on their own devices. So it's grown multifold, that problem, because I mean people want to shoot, there's technology, there is post work which is great, enhancing the picture, but you don't know the end consumer is going to watch it like that or not. Satyaji, we are already in the future. It is, there is everybody who has a phone is already shooting videos and putting them out on Instagram, and so everybody is a filmmaker here. Anybody who's clicking a video right now is a filmmaker. I think cinema, as we have known it, as the large screen experience, will, I think, go back to becoming a more communal experience, something that you do in large groups. And of course, there will always be exceptions. There have always been exceptions to this. One small film will come and, change everything. But because of, like she said, the kind of numbers that are riding on these films, the amount of money that the stars are charging, it is going to become, cinema is going to become more and more about family and, big communal experiences, something that you don't expect to watch on a small screen, because small screens already, OTT is already doing a great job of, bringing in technology wherever they can and thinking differently and bigger. Internationally, it's definitely happening. We are catching up slowly and steadily. So, but yeah, it's again, it's completely audience dependent, Post-COVID, it looked like sab kuch khatam ho gaya hai, nothing's going to work again. Then one film came, changed everything. But that film is nothing to go by, is what I personally feel. It's going to take that much more effort to make a good film, because something that's digitization has also changed is that discipline is gone. Like he said, that एक frame जो importance होता था, एक inch film का जो importance होता था, वो अब नहीं है. There is a line that we use which our post producers hate, is post में संभाल लेंगे.
That is a terrible thing, it's very irritating, because you don't want to take it, shoot properly, lazy filmmaking, अरे ठीक कर दो ना. Post में क्या संभालोगे, अभी नहीं होगा तो,
Correct. So because tape is so easily available now, everything is on a memory card. Yes, it's made our lives very easy as compared to the analog times, but also filmmaking has become lazy, and it's becoming more and more difficult to focus on quality, to say no, we need a certain lighting, we'll figure it out. Abhi shoot karo, actor ka date ja raha hai, light ja raha hai, those are, so it's becoming a bigger business, like she said. The focus is far more on the volume. We have stars who will only give you 30 days no matter what the scale of the film. And so commercial cinema has its own challenges. Therefore, they have to work harder to please the audiences. But I don't think it's going anywhere.
I'm going to leave you with, before we open this up for questions, we have 15 minutes for questions. I hope you have plenty of questions. But before that, I'm going to leave you with this thought, all three of you, that this is not just the problem with cinema. In the in magazines, people would write rubbish and say, editor dekh lega. And the editor is breaking his head. It's like when you go to your tailor and you say, ye sleeve jara theek kar do. He says, main pura bana dunga, par sleeve nahi theek karunga. Usme double jhanjat hai. So it's the same thing, that to do it in post-production or to do it at the editing table in the magazine, on the magazine floor, is a nuisance. But there is also the other thought that a lot of, I've spoken to a lot of songwriters and creators of music and asked them, why are your tunes like this? He says, wo ringtone mein jab bikta hai na, humko paisa aata hai. So I have to make my tune ringtone friendly, that somebody will buy it and make it that wo do line sunni chahiye. It should be catchy enough. So there automatically the rhythm, everything is set. Because you can't have happening, nobody is going to listen to it. It has to have a beat and a rhythm. Okay, thank you all very much, all three of you. You've been brilliant, absolutely. And Thank you, audience. You've laughed at the right time. You were listening. So come up with some questions, please. Yeah, right there.
Here I go. प्रकाश जी, आपके लिए सवाल मेरा कि आपने कहा 1912 और 1917 में जब चंपारण सत्याग्रह हुआ, तो आपने चंपारण मेंशन नहीं किया, पर मैं टाइम को वहाँ पैक कर रहा हूँ. तो उस वक्त गांधी जी को कवर कर रहे थे क्रूज बाहर से. मेरा प्रश्न ये है कि वो जो बना रहे थे उस वक्त, जो भी उनका फुटेज था, उसका इस्तेमाल कहाँ था? उस वक्त टीवी तो था नहीं, शायद सिनेमा हॉल्स में भी न्यूज़ रील का वो करने का चलन नहीं आया था, तो उसका इस्तेमाल कहाँ होता था?
वही आपने जो मेंशन किया वही था. न्यूज़ रील्स वेयर द बिग ड्रॉ. You know, just before the actual film was shown, there were these newsreels being screened. So this was a package basically. So जैसे Fox movie to उनका बताया, British movie to उनका बताया, Paramount, Universal. So these were major kind of newsreel makers. And वो तो सारा content जो है not only India but across the world उनका content बनता था, and they used to be shown as a package. So for a few minutes or so. So that was the major input of these newsreels जो बनाते थे, उसके लिए वो, that was the major usage जो था वो newsreel में था. And it was a very, very top draw, because I have given figures in my book, at one point of time it was being watched by millions across the world.
Yes. Just to add to it, even in India, when you went to a film, you went to for a 3 o'clock show, so 3 to 3:15 would be newsreel. What's happening? कहाँ inauguration हुआ? क्या हुआ? कौन आया? कौन गया?
That was much later, madam. I think that was much later. That is where I was trying to relate to the timelines.
Yes, at that time also, first they were for it, but even before India started doing it, when independence happened, that this thing became Films Division. They made it into, first it was Indian something, and then it became Films Division.
No, but from the cinema history point of time, newsreels were the major kind of draw that time.
All over the world.
एक छोटा प्रश्न आपसे और है प्रकाश जी, कि जो फिल्म आर्काइव्स ऑफ इंडिया है वो कितना एक्सेसिबल है ओपनली?
I think अच्छा कि आपने ये पूछा, because film archive has two major objectives. One is obviously preservation जो है वो करना है, but at the same time it has to be made accessible to the people. So what happened and just to give a context, जो हम अभी बात कर रहे थे डिजिटल वगैरह का, जो फिल्में बनती थी इंडिया में वो obviously analog पे बनती थी, but this shift came in 2012-13 जब डिजिटल में फिल्में बनना शुरू हो गई. तो ऑब्वियसली फिल्में बनना शुरू हो गई, तो मतलब उसको अभी तो देयर इज अ ह्यूज कंटेंट व्हिच इज अवेलेबल ऑन एनालॉग, वी कॉल इट celluloid in the archive, that needs to be digitized, and it's a costly proposition. So and we have such a huge content, you can't, ideally yes you should contain all or you should digitize all, but because of the various consideration you can't, so you have to prioritize. So वो जो process है अभी शुरू है, there is a project called National Film Heritage Mission, Government of India का है, and we are digitizing film, we are restoring films, not only the feature films but also the documentaries and the short films. So this work is right now going on, and the idea is at the end of it, that's what we had conceived when I was there, that we have a portal and it will be made available to the bona fide users. So that was the idea.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really grateful to all the panelists for sharing their very rich experiences and reflections with us. I just wanted to make an observation, and if Arunaji would respond to that. Arunaji, you were referring to the various reasons for which people might be making films. A couple of months back, I saw this serial, a couple of episodes, few episodes only. Maybe some of you have seen it. It was called Cinema Marte Dam Tak, which was about what might be called B grade or C grade or maybe even D grade films. And these were directors who, the format was that these directors had been invited to make these films again, and in the process narrate their own experiences and their own stories. And apparently there was this very short span of a couple of years when this kind of cinema was very successful in the late 90s, and then it kind of died out. And the interesting thing was that, that as this cinema became, successful, what they pointed out was that, everything became redundant. What was really important was that 5 or 6 minute clip which was inserted into the film, which was, the censors didn't know about, and which was the reason for drawing the crowd. Obviously, you know what the film clip was all about. And that eventually led to killing this kind of cinema. So it's not just, the trend that you were referring to, where women are getting marginalized, they are sort of superfluous, and just the item number. This obviously was an extreme form of that, where that 5-minute clip was what mattered, and the rest of the film was completely irrelevant.
You're right. Actually, in cinema theatre, this used to happen a lot, especially not in the city area so much, where families would come. But I remember definitely, because I was doing something in the red light areas, doing some research. And in those theatres, literally, these extrapolated material was there. They were actually inserted, sex scenes from foreign films, or even porn work. That was inserted, and people would watch that. So it was very, very rampant. And people would, the seizures would be there, they would go and arrest those guys, but they'd let them off, and then again they would be doing the same thing after a few days. So this was you see, because, and India has been, like, I may say that, used to be at least known as somewhat sex-starved, in terms of people don't talk about sex, don't understand, they just want to do everything on the quiet and produce a lot of babies and so on. But, so there was no freedom. And people, the scopophilia I was saying about wanting to watch something, what to watch. And male gaze, of course, I hold a lot of American cinema responsible in a way, because you didn't see that so much in European cinema. But what I see, talk about male gaze, there was a person called Laura Mulvey who did this study on male gaze. And looking at women's bodies and, playing it up so that attention is drawn to them, to the women's bodies. So these were the things that India lapped it up, because, as I said, we were a self-starved nation. Today we have more freedom to talk about sex. That is why when I released my film in Rihai, people were horrified. They said, how can you? But they got the point. They got the point, and they appreciated, and I was accepted, and there was no morcha coming to my house, thankfully, in spite of all that. But it takes time for these conversations to grow, I think, and thank you for pointing that out.
Hello, thank you for this. I had a question for Kanchan. I'm a little curious about subtitling. I think because OTTs have made everything so multilingual, and I'm very tempted to watch films in languages I don't understand, Indian regional, so Tamil, Malayalam, etc. And I'm not a huge film buff, but whatever little I've seen, often subtitles seem to be of iffy quality. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. So I'm curious about who the people are who do the subtitling. What is the pool that is drawn from? How is it done? If you could shed some light.
It's evolving. It's new to India. So, some people take a lot of care about subtitling. I mean, when I was at Netflix, there was a whole team that was entirely dedicated to subtitles, but we'd first get the writer and the creator of the show to, give us the emotional subtitles, and then they have to be sort of fit into the technical specifications of the exhibition format and stuff. So, kuch reh jata hai, kuch nikal jata hai. But yeah, at Netflix they did try and preserve at least the emotion. Sometimes we get overridden by writers saying no, it has to stay like that. But it's it's too long for people to read. So it's an evolving industry.
Thank you.
Good evening. A short question. I need your opinion on whether life imitates art or art imitates life as far as cinema goes, because we spoke of the history. And what is your experience as per Indian cinema?
I'm sorry, can you come back again?
Yeah, I was asking you about, as far as the Indian cinema goes, do you believe that life imitates art or art imitates life?
Oh, life imitates art or art, I think it works both ways. Because definitely, because when we make films, we take stories from life, right? and we portray them. But how we portray them, again, how realistically we portray them, how much we twist the stories and portray them, it's like that. But people do copy and do take things from the films. For example, eve teasing or stalking. Now, where did all these generations happen? In the 70s, late 60s and 70s, the films were, all the heroes were stalking the women. And not only stalking, when the Amitabh Bachchan films were there, they were even manhandling women like Zeenat Aman and Parveen Babi, khande pe dalo, so pheko, kuch bhi karo. I mean, hello, how can we deal with this? But it became a fashion, just as they copied hairstyles and kola shirt and, they also copied some of these things because it looked like that if you want to be macho, this is the way to go, man, kind of an attitude. So people pick up those things also. People pick up fashion. But a lot of the time, people don't pick up very good things also, unfortunately. But these are the superficial things. So it does influence. Now, if you make a thought-provoking film, it does influence. People stay with it for days together. So what are you providing? Are you providing something for the mind and for the body or whatever? Or you're only providing something? So it depends. And it definitely affects people, society. And eventually, again, it becomes another place to draw your stories from. This is another stalking story. Next level. Yeah.
Yeah, so ma'am, I had a question for Aruna ma'am and Kanchan. So the session is titled Significant Moments in Hindi Cinema. What significant moment are you personally looking forward to? That has not yet happened.
You want to go first?
Looking forward to, just more inclusive stories for sure. I think it's high time. We've taken so much from the West, but we still haven't gotten their political maturity. Hopefully we can get there someday. It seems a little far away right now, but yeah, I'd be really happy if, nobody, no producer ever says, why gay protagonist की story कोई नहीं देखता है, या ये orange color नहीं चलेगा, things like that. It's just, it's cinema, it's art. It's we just have to be able to express ourselves and show characters that are in society. These are not characters from somewhere else. They all around us, and we all have our own views. And I mean, I'm not saying that we should make it a medium to propagate our politics. I think that's really bad. But everything should be able to exist, because I don't think the audiences are not ready. Most of the times that's the excuse that's given, that the audiences are not ready, which I absolutely don't believe. Audiences don't know what they want. They watch and they either accept it or reject it.
Yeah, so. Because actually, to say from where you left off, for years together, especially people would say, filmmakers would say, "Arey, ye audience ki मांग है, item number चाहिए, ये चाहिए, वो चाहिए." I said, audience कब बताया आपको ये मांग है, उनको चाहिए? I would always cross-question them and say, when did the audience say that? Give them a good story, they'll listen to it, and they'll you see, what you said was significant. What's important is to create those characters that resonate with people. See, human beings are human beings, the same everywhere, all over the world. I happen to be also, one of the other things I do is I'm a life coach and a motivational, transformational leader. So what I do, I get to travel the world, and human beings are the same everywhere. So you give them, Parasite, they'll still appreciate it in America. You give them 400 blows, they'll appreciate it here and anywhere. Bicycle thieves, the whole world accepted it. So you see, if you have those characters which resonate with you, and you create, I think that's the winning, that you cannot default on that. If you've got, and also second thing, I feel collective viewing is very important, because human beings are social beings. When you watch a film with a group, it's a very different experience than watching it on a small screen, on your laptop, alone. You have to watch it with people. It's more fun, and I think it's more inclusive. And if you can have a bucket of popcorn, even better.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Since we have talked about the artistic freedom, if you can throw light on, evolution of censorships that we have seen over that time.
That one I've got. I don't know about the evolution of censorship.
What time lagega, huh?
I've got a couple of crazy experiences. You see, censors are such, they want to cut no matter what. The job they think is to cut, and they're not qualified to tell you what to put where and how to do. They just want to cut. Now, I'll tell you, share a story. Now, rape is something which sometimes it happens, sometimes it's in your movies because you want to tell a story of, And I was making a film on the Devdasis of the Yellama temple. I don't know how many of you know about these Devdasis of, it's Maharashtra-Karnataka border. There is this temple, little girls, 8, 10, whatever age, they are actually married off to the goddess or get dedicated to the goddess, and then everybody has a go at them, and they end up in the Kamatipura red light area of Bombay. So here was this, and I was supposed to show something happening to this little girl. Now, as it is, it's too much for me to handle. How am I going to show the rape of a little girl? But then this is where creatively one had to do something. What I did was, there was another girl who also had to be a Devdasi, and she said, no, I don't want to be a Devdasi. She had gone to school, and she said, I'm not. And the little girl in the film was taken to the farmhouse of this landlord who had sponsored her. And she was sitting there, she was scared. And what I did was, this girl says, can't we stop it? And the elder Devdasi says, no, we can't stop it. This is pratha, it will continue. So this girl runs cross country, reaches the farmhouse, and she sees everything is very quiet. I'm just describing the scene to you. And it's all very quiet, and the henchmen and all these guys are playing cards outside, and it's deserted. And she walks around the house, and there is a little ledge, and she hears some laughter, a man's laughter, and she goes, and there is a broken window. Actually, there was a ledge, and there was a window there, so we broke the window. And this girl is looking inside, and the whole rape is on the girl who's looking, rather than the girl who's being raped. Now, on the soundtrack, you can hear the child screaming, but the whole rape is on this girl. At the end of the rape, this girl outside, she collapses. And now this film goes to the censor. And they said, this is too disturbing. You have to cut something. I said, I want rapes are supposed to be disturbing. So I'm very happy if you found it disturbing. Thank you. But they said, no, cut something. I said, tell me what to cut. There's nothing to cut because there's nothing on the screen to cut. So it went through. And that's how. Unlike in those days, also there were lots of rapes happening in Hindi films, which were absolutely titillating. They were, running around, chasing, tearing this, tearing that, and the girl crying at the end of the thing. And so censors have always been there, like in another documentary, which won an award, the father of an autistic child says, everybody was saying, your child is abnormal. Look at him, because the boy is now so much better. He's a special child, and he's able to work in a kind of a shelter home and earning his living because he can do something. And they said, abnormal bola usko kaat do. I said, he baap bol raha hai, apne bacche ke baare mein bol raha hai, and he's not saying it in a derogatory way. He's saying, this is about my child. And so I said, I'm going to the tribunal, bulao, main aati hu. So then they let it pass. So you have to take them on, because they are not the best judges of what to keep. If I showed you all that stuff, now I just showed you stills. If I showed you the entire songs, the horrible lyrics of those songs, some of the songs of the Bollywood item numbers, why didn't they do anything about it? It's very demeaning to women. It's very demeaning to women, and people don't seem to realize that. And the censors don't do a thing about it. If they're told they have to do it, then do it in the right place.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we're running out of time. Thank you again. Sorry I took longer.
Thank you so much. This is a totally magical evening. Since the last point was on censorship, I'll just share a little nugget of my own engagement with film archives. I was in Jaipur at the National Archives, and all the censorship board files are at the National Archives in Jaipur. And I was just looking for different movies, and I looked for Albert Pinto Ko Gussa Kyun Aata Hai, 1980 film. And it's a lovely exchange between the censor board and the production house as to what should be cut. And they said it's a great film, but there's one line you can't use in the film, and that's Haramzade communists. So that is the one line which is dropped from the movie as recommended by the censor board. But thank you again so much for an absolutely lovely session. We'd like to present you with some mementos, so please bring them on stage.
I got all